Welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 223, Song vs. Simone, also known as UFC Vegas 72. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me, as always, is Keith Schillen, the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network. Keith, how are you doing today?
Good, brother. How you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. We're recording this. Right now, it's not even 24 hours from when we recorded the recap for UFC Vegas 71. That would be Pavlovich versus Blades. I'm just going to jump right out and say that this card has a bit to live up to. And I say that as someone who gave that last card like a C or a C minus or something, but it ended with a bang. In fact, every major combat sports event of this past weekend ended with the bang. Patchy Mix, Tank Davis, and Sergey Pavlovich. But the UFC marches on. The endless parade of Apex cards marches on. This one has a main event borrowed from UFC Vegas 71. Of course, Song Yadong and Ricky Simone were supposed to be the co-main events of last week's card. Now they're the main event, replacing Renato Moicano and Arman Tsarukyan. What do you think of the card? Give it an overall grade in advance on paper.
Yeah, it's not that great. I'd like a D plus. I want to go all the way to a D because the UFC made a lot of effort to know that they needed a change in main event. You know, bringing in Simone and Song. I mean, I know they only got pushed back a week, but props to them for stepping up to take it's a 5-round fight, right?
Yes.
Yeah, to add 2 extra rounds. There's a couple other the co-main event's pretty good. There's some action guys on the bottom of the card. I'm thinking a guy like Julian Erosa is always fun. So I always try to balance like how fun the fight's going to be with division rankings relevance, and this doesn't have a lot of that.
No, that's fair to say. And kind of tucked away in the middle of this card is a brace of heavyweight fights that have all the potential to show us all the reasons why heavyweight is not good. So we can only pray that we get some quick finishes in those. Otherwise, buckle up.
Yeah, we could be.
Also, got to knock on wood that poor Hailey Cowan actually gets to walk to the cage and try to punch someone in her third try in like the last 6 weeks or so.
So if something happens and I know like her last booking wasn't her fault, but I think it's the third time we're talking about her to make her UFC debut. If something happens in this fight, like just cut her. Like even if it's not her fault, just say like, hey, it's not meant to be.
Either just cut her or just give her a belt. Just say like the universe is scared of her. They're ducking her. Like the entire women's divisions of planet Earth are ducking Hailey Cowan. Yeah, so it's one or the other.
I think about this. I don't know why I thought of this one, but there was this girl I was before my wife and everything. A girl I was, a friend introduced me to her. We kind of was like feeling each other out a little bit, and we were supposed to go out on a date. And I don't know, something happened, and one of us canceled, and then. We scheduled for a second time, and then something happened. Then I got deployed when I was in the Army. I got deployed, and everything just fell away. Then years later, we tried to rekindle it, and it wasn't meant to be. That's a Hailey Cowan. It just wasn't meant to be.
I like that. Any other general thoughts on this one before we dive into these prelims?
Yeah, and just out of coincidence, it was actually Hailey Cowan too. So it was.
Heck. The one that got away. Speaking of the recently unlucky Ms. Cowan, first up out of the gate at UFC Vegas 72 is a bantamweight matchup featuring Hailey Cowan versus the debuting Jamey-Lyn Horth. Cowan, the 31-year-old Texan, is 7-2 overall. She will be making, hopefully, knock on wood, her UFC debut, having won her way into the promotion on the Contender Series last August, where she took a split decision over Claudia Leite. She had been scheduled to fight on February 25th against Eileen Perez. Cowan withdrew during fight week with an illness that turned out to be an ovarian cyst. I don't own any ovaries, but I understand that that's extremely painful. So happily, she had a speedy recovery, was scheduled to fight Tamarez Vidal on March 25th. And that time, Vidal was the one who withdrew once again, very close to the time of the fight.
Was it another cyst injury?
There, I don't know. I'm not. Ms. Vidal is not quite as open.
You already gave out way more information than I needed, but
why? It's not like I'm snooping around her doctor's office. She told us all what was going on. But here it is. It'll be April 29th. So just 5 weeks later, third time, hopefully will be the charm. And facing her again, hopefully will be another woman whose route to the UFC has been delayed numerous times. Horth, the 33-year-old Canadian, is a perfect 5-0 as a mixed martial artist. She last fought all the way back in December of 2021. So coming up on 18 months ago, she won the vacant LFA flyweight title over Mayra Cantuaria. She actually was snapped up by the Contender Series from there, but ended up having visa issues. Then she had a title defense in LFA scheduled that was canceled, and I'm not exactly sure why. The Contender Series tried to get her again. At this point, apparently they've just decided to skip the whole velvet rope thing, bring her straight into the UFC, and so she will be stepping up from flyweight to bantamweight to face Cowan. Odds here, it's a dead pick'em. Both women right now -110 or -115, depending on which betting outlet you choose. There's not a whole lot of tape on Jamey-Lyn Horth. She has 5 total fights, and a couple of them were in BFL, Battlefield Fight League, which is a British Columbia promotion that not all their stuff is even available. I don't even know if it was all filmed. It's not the highest level promotion, but her fights in
they haven't got video cameras yet in British Columbia. Tipping out there tough.
You're the one married to a Canadian. Yeah, I'm not going to go all Chael Sonnen on him.
You got to go like do some ice trucking, that kind of show to get stuff out there. They haven't got that yet.
Just do the Chael Sonnen. And I was in Vancouver, and there were 2 Canadians like talking to a bus, and one of them was petting the bus. The other one was trying to sell it some weed. Anyway, from what I've seen of Jamey-Lyn Horth, she is big for a flyweight. She definitely got by as kind of a bully. There's a bit of a wrestle boxer about her. She wants to swing her way into range, even though she's usually the taller woman. She gets takedowns, and they're generally bully takedowns, like aggression, get her hands on the other woman, throw her down. Got a good submission game. She has mean ground and pound. That's what stood out to me in both of the full fights of hers I watched. Mean intentions when she's on top on the ground. And when she was announced as the other half of this fight, I was like, why is her name familiar? And it's because when she won the LFA title over Cantuaria a year and a half ago, I remember being kind of impressed and thinking, like she'd make a good addition to the UFC flyweight division. Forgot all about her. Now I'm reminded, and I'm like, well, now it's a bantamweight, and it's against someone in Cowan that I don't know what kind of strides Horth will have made in her game in the last 18 months, but the things that she did on the regional Canadian level probably will not translate well to beating Hailey Cowan. And we previewed Cowan's February fight, and even at the time, and then definitely listening back to it later, I feel like I was like unnecessarily mean to her, or it sounded that way, because I said I had kind of expected her to have maybe accomplished more by now, or developed further. But the thing she does well, she does really well. And Horth, like I said, is a big flyweight. Hey, Cowan was a huge flyweight that I never understood how she made that weight on a consistent level. She's not a small bantamweight. She's really strong. And I just expect that she's going to kind of beat Horth at Horth's own game here. I find them roughly comparable in terms of their striking, like rudimentary, but strong women throwing hard. And then Horth's style of takedowns is kind of similar to Cowan's, and I just think Cowan's going to be bigger and stronger. Give me Cowan to win a decision here. I think Horth is a worthwhile addition to the UFC. I'll be interested to see whether she decides to go to flyweight or stay at bantamweight from here. But for now, won't be a happy landing in the UFC. Cowan will finally get her UFC debut and will get her hand raised. Give me Cowan by decision.
Yeah, I'm so sick of talking about Cowan at this point. like we talked about 3 times in a month. She's big for the weight class. She's a great athlete, a southpaw who's pretty light on her feet. Good output, long distance striking, fast hands. I like her check right hook. Lots of kicks, quick kicks. She likes that like Holly Holm side kick. She's got a quick high kick. She doesn't check leg kicks. So that's a little bit of an issue. I like that she mixes punches and kicks together in a combination, which not enough MMA fighters do. She's very physically strong, even though she's up a weight class. She likes to grind in the clinch. I wouldn't go back to her Contender Series fight. She cut up her opponent with an elbow inside the clinch, hit some nice knees in the clinch. She's not much of an offensive wrestler, but if she's on top, she's got some pretty decent ground and pound. A weak defensive wrestler, though, and she struggled to get back up. I think that's probably Horth's best avenue for victory is to try to get on top. She has also given up her back to get up, and she almost got head and arm triangled on the Contender Series. And both of her losses have come by submission. Now, Horth, she's already 33, making her debut, which I don't like. You mentioned her being really big for the weight class. Moving up, I don't think that's an issue. Size won't be an issue. She moves a lot of L stepping. Good output, a lot of straight punches down the pipe, a lot of teep kicks, though she throws really naked leg kicks and kind of pulls her head back when she does. She doesn't like being pressured, and she keeps her chin high in the air. She was dropped in her last fight, which is concerning. She likes to battle in the clinch. I haven't seen too much of her offensive wrestling. It's more like just like two girls grabbing each other and tripping over each other. Not like, she's making good entries. Some weak takedown defense. I like that she gets up pretty good. It's hard to hold it down, and she has 2 submission wins on her record. I understand why the line just is so close. I'm not high on either one. I've flip-flopped back and forth. I have not liked Cowan's ground game, but I think we're gonna have a large kicking battle, and I think she's probably the better athlete. I think we've been doing picks on Cowan, and I've gone against her 2 times. Well, 3rd time's the charm. I'm gonna go with Cowan. And I say she wins by a split decision.
All right. Next up on the UFC Fight Night 223 prelims is a men's bantamweight matchup between Brian Kelleher and Journey Newson. Kelleher, the 36-year-old New York native, is 24-14 overall. He is 8-7 in the UFC. He is 5-4 at bantamweight. He has bounced back and forth between 135 and 145 pounds, but at 135, he is 5-4. He is on a 2-fight losing streak. Fought 3 times last year. He won in January, a unanimous decision over Kevin Kroom. Then got a bump in competition. Came back in March, got choked out by Umar Nurmagomedov. Then in June, fought on the UFC on ESPN Sarukian versus Gamrot card. Got choked out in the first round once again, this time by Mario Bautista. He'll be looking not to make it 3 in a row. Speaking of which, another gentleman with his back against the wall will be Newson. The 34-year-old Californian by way of Oregon is 10-4 with 1 no contest overall. He's 1-3 with 1 no contest in the UFC. Worth noting that the 1 no contest was him plunking Domingo Pilarte in 38 seconds, which was then overturned for cannabis. So make of that what you will. But officially on the books, he is 1 up and 3 down in the UFC. He lost his last time out. It was at UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Strickland in December, where he dropped a unanimous decision to Sergey Morozov. Odds here favor Kelleher. He's a moderate favorite at -170. Newson available +140 or so on the comeback. Keith, I'm going to toss this to you, but I feel as though in Kelleher, we've got a guy who is very, very much a known quantity, either at 135 or 145. And Newson, despite the fact that his record on paper in the UFC is dismal, I just still feel like there's a spark of potential there. Am I deluding myself, or do you see it too?
to get deluding yourself.
Okay, that's we have you on the show to keep it real, Keith. That's your job here.
Well, he's got a tough out. Like, he's facing Brian Kelleher, who's, whether you're a seasoned veteran or you're a guy making his UFC debut. I mean, Kelleher is what he is at this point in his career, but he's always a tough out. Like, I mean, yeah, sure, Mario Batista ran through him or something like that, but that's a really good quality win. So I think it's a tough journey for Mr. Newson, like that. Kelleher, he's this guy. The reason why he's tough, he's not great at anything, but there's no major holes when you watch him. He's a pressure counter striker who's got good output, very boxing style to his striking. He sets up his power shots with a lot of feints. I'd say he's got some plus power. His lack of athleticism did hurt him against Mario Batista, as Kelleher really struggled with Batista's speed. He doesn't check leg kicks too, which is a little troublesome. Now, he's not a very credentialed wrestler. I know he's from, I think, like Long Island area, so that's a strong area for wrestling. But he's not the guy when we think about wrestlers. That said, and the reason why I mentioned that, I think he's a very underrated wrestler. Like, he's got some good timing on his takedowns. He also has like a relentless mindset to get the fight to the ground, gets guys down that he probably has no reason to get down. He does defend takedowns with jumping guillotine, which I don't like. But to his credit, he has a really good one. Like, he's caught guys in the UFC with it. But he has been subbed himself in back-to-back fights, which is obviously concerning. Now, Newson, he moves well. That's the thing that's like, he's got some good footwork. He likes to kind of fight at range and then suddenly blitz in the pocket and land some shots. I like his left hook. He's got some sting in his shots. Tossed out way too many spinning attacks for my liking, but it's got some good leg kicks. He can wrestle a little bit. More of like a winning scramble funk style guy than a power double leg guy. But he can grapple a little bit. I mean, he almost caught Ricardo Ramos in a guillotine, which would have been really impressive. But his chin is a little bit concerning when he got easily smashed by Cortes-Acosta, which is a fight, in a loss that has not aged well at all. I mean, it took a 180 turn since then. After like back-to-back losses, you have to really worry about Kelleher declining, especially being that he's 36 years old. Especially he's not just 36 who, got in the game late. He's been in the game for a long time. He had a lot of regional fights before this. He's got a lot of wear and tear on that. If he's still the same fighter that he was a couple years ago, I think he wins. I think he's probably better than Newsom everywhere. And that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to say he still has a little bit left in him. I say he lands the hardest strikes. I say he secures a takedown or two. I do think it's a close fight, but I would say Kelleher wins by decision.
Yeah, I kind of thought out different scenarios and racked my brain for ways that Newsom would be a solid underdog pick here. But I'm with you. Just his defensive deficiencies on the feet, his propensity for throwing spinning stuff that just leaves him, that never works and leaves him open to getting countered. A guy that's fundamentally sound and hits hard like Kelleher can exploit that. Also, I agree that Kelleher is going to be the more effective wrestler in the cage. So all the most likely outcomes point towards Kelleher winning a decision here, or maybe even just getting a knockout. But, and that's even if he is kind of, beginning to be on the downslope of his career. So give me Kelleher here. And I'm going to say he wins the decision as well, but it wouldn't surprise me if he hurts Newson bad and manages to get a TKO at some point. We head back to the women's bantamweight division now for a matchup between Stephanie Egger and Irina Alekseeva. Egger, the 34-year-old Switzerland native, is 8-3 overall. She's 3-2 in the UFC. She is 2-2 at bantamweight. She entered the UFC as a bantamweight, 1-2, lost 2. Most recently fought at UFC Fight Night Gone versus Tuivasa last September, where she took on Eileen Perez in a featherweight matchup, choked her out in the second round. She will be back in her native weight class here to meet Alekseeva. The 32-year-old Russian, who goes by the absolutely terrible nickname, the Russian Ronda, is 4-1 overall This will be her UFC debut. She fought most recently, about 18, 19 months ago at Bellator 269. That was the Fedor farewell. We wish Fedor farewell fight, the one where he knocked out Tim Johnson. Bellator grabbed every Russian they possibly could for that. Alekseeva was one of them, and she took a unanimous decision over Stephanie Page there, and was also like a foot taller than she was. Anyway, Egger is a prohibitive favorite here, one of the biggest favorites on the card. She is minus 300, Alekseeva plus 225. So Irina Alekseeva, she's huge. She's going to be big even for bantamweight, and that's after fighting most of her career at flyweight. Yeah, she bounced back and forth between flyweight and bantamweight. Her fight in Bellator back in 2021 was at 130-pound catchweight, mostly because Stephanie Page was tiny even for flyweight. They didn't want to make her fight at 135, I guess. But the reason that the whole Russian Ronda thing is terrible is that she doesn't fight anything like Ronda Rousey. She's not. If she is a judoka, she doesn't fight like one.
Another funny thing is, I was going through her record, and she made her debut in 2019. That was 3 years after Ronda Rousey last fought, and was on a 2-fight losing streak. Like if she came out in 2015, I understand the analogy a little bit better. Like she's getting compared to, can she beat men?
Yeah,
but no, not Ronda Rousey, who lost 2 in a row, and unless it's a different Ronda she's talking about, is another famous Ronda maybe.
Get at us, Irina. Let us know what's up with the nickname. But in her Bellator fight, at least, I saw a fighter who kind of swung free, swung wildly, got away with a lot of things just because she was so much bigger than Paige. Like Paige tried to take her down, she couldn't. Paige had trouble just navigating the sheer size difference. But I'm not saying that Stephanie Egger is Ronda Rousey, but she's one of the better pure judokas in the women's divisions in the UFC right now. And I think Alekseeva is going to get a little taste of what it would have been like to fight Ronda Rousey. I expect that Egger is going to dump her on her head and armbar or kimura her probably in the first round. Egger's not a great athlete in terms of speed, but she is big for the division. She's extremely strong. And I feel as though she's kind of developed a striking game that makes the most of the tools she has and doesn't leave her too vulnerable. She's shown that she can kind of stay composed against wild, aggressive women that want to bull rush her and just kind of handle them. And I expect that's what she's going to do to Alekseeva. Give me Egger by first round submission.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going over famous Rondas that she could have been named after instead.
I completely get it, man. That's what we should have done instead of tape study. Just come up with other people that she must have been trying to name herself after.
There's a famous professional wrestler, a Canadian professional wrestler, Ronda Singh. So, hey, that's the Canadian one. I'm the Russian Ronda Singh. But I think the one that might be best is Rhonda Bella Martin, who is a American serial killer in the 1950s. So maybe that's what she was going with. I don't know.
That's dark, man. Wow. Irina.
Yeah. Jeez.
Gonna murder somebody.
I'll start with Egger. She's not a great athlete, but she's very big and she's very strong. She likes to march forward. She wins with volume. She understands range really well. She likes to keep her range. Keeping her opponents in the end of her punches. Though she doesn't have the quickest hands, she also makes the mistake of pulling a head straight back. You mentioned the judo background. She's a judo black belt, gets inside, trips, throws. She has a submission on her. She medaled at Abu Dhabi. She hit Jessica Rose Clark with a beautiful armbar. She just subbed Eileen Perez really quick. Though she was surprisingly subbed by Mayra Bueno Silva, so I'm not too sure about that. Now the old Russian Ronda, she's big too. Like she's a long and lengthy fighter. Like I don't know how much tape study you did on her, but it just kept bothering me. Like her torso just like really disproportionate. Like it was so long. Like it just kept going.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you notice that? It was so distracting.
Yes. She looks like a penguin. like the torso just goes forever. Then these short legs. Yeah.
Like she was stuck in one of those like medieval torture devices where they just like tied her up and slowly just stretched her, like turned the
put her on the rack.
Yeah, every hour they turned it in like half an inch or something. Anyways, I mean, you know what? Maybe that goes back to the Rhonda Bella Martin, serial killer thing. Maybe she was like experimenting on herself first. I don't know. Shout out to like the one person listening to the show that, like, I'm not gonna go there. Never mind. All right, back to we don't want to inspire any serial killers out there. She's crazy long and she misses weight, so that makes it even worse. Her last fight she missed weight. She presses forward, a lot of wild striking, a lot of looping shots, throws hard body kicks, throws a lot of naked kicks. I disagree a little bit about she doesn't fight like Rhonda. She does like to get to the clinch in battle. I mean, she's got a judo background. She also has a sambo background, some throws, some foot sweeps. She likes a scarf hold, which I hate that. Unless there's very few people that actually works on. But she gets on top. She got some good ground and pound. Though, if to get the fight to the ground, like it's all the clinch. I've seen her like do some shots, and it is ugly. Her entries. She must not be from the Dagestan area of Russia. Must be the other side or something because they're not good. I think this fight is actually tough to pick because I think they're very similar. I think the odds are a little off. I think they should be much closer. I'm gonna go with the favorite Egger, but not with not a lot of confidence. Give me Egger by decision.
We head now to the flyweight division for a clash between Cody Durden and Charles Johnson. Durden, the 32-year-old Georgia native, is 14-4-1 overall. He is 3-2-1 in the UFC. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He fought 3 times last year, opened the year with bad luck, ran into Muhammad Mokaev, got guillotined in just under a minute. But after that, he strung together back-to-back wins over JP Bays and Carlos Mota. The most recent of those, the Mota fight, was in October at UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen. Durden will be looking to make it 3 in a row, and opposing him in that pursuit will be Johnson. The 32-year-old Missouri native is 13-4 overall. He is 2-2 in the UFC. He's coming off a loss. He fought in February at UFC Fight Night Moonies versus Allen, dropping a split decision to Ode Osborne. Prior to that, he had back-to-back wins over Zhalgas Zhumagulov and Jimmy Flick. Odds here find Johnson a moderate favorite. He's minus 180, Durden plus 150 or so. Keith, Charles Johnson, I believe he's going to be the first UFC fighter to get 3 bouts in 2023. So he's like Hailey Cowan, if Hailey Cowan actually got to fight each time she was scheduled. Who you got in this one, and how do you see it going?
Yeah, this is a fun fight. You know how we usually say who's the closest person to getting a title shot? Before they change the main event, it actually might be the winner of this fight, even though Charles Johnson's coming off a loss. Like, if Cody Durden won, he might be the closest person to get a title shot. Durden, he's a very high-volume striker. He loves to press the action, marches forward, throwing really hard, wild shots, slides in the pocket, unloads big shots. They're kind of looping, but he's really coming to his power. I mean, he starts JP Buys, dropped Carlos Mota in his last fight. Again, not the highest guys in the division, but still at flyweight to be dropping guys, and that's good. He's got some hard kicks. He does check leg kicks, which I do like. He's a good wrestler. He's kind of relentless to get the fight to the ground. Good top control. He was pretty impressive against Chris Gutierrez when he was able to take his back and held on for like the entire round. He's got some good ground and pound. I am worried about his submission defense though, as he's been submitted 3 out of his 4 losses, so that's something to watch out for. Charles Johnson, he just fights a lot, and I feel like when was the Ode Osborne fight? It was just felt like
February.
Yeah.
And the Jimmy Flick fight was like 6 weeks before that. It was in January. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the Flick fight was over quick. That one, he looked fantastic in that fight. And even Ode, even in a loss against Ode, I don't think he looked bad. He's a good athlete. He uses movement really well. He's pretty elusive. He's a moving target, so it's really hard to time him. He's a kickboxer who constantly flowing between both stances, fighting out of them. He really relies on head movement, and he rolls with punches pretty well, which for the optics doesn't look good. But overall, he's hard to hit. He hated the pressure from Zumagulov, and that was a fight that I don't know how you scored it, but I actually gave it to Zumagulov, though it wasn't a robbery or anything like that. He's a good wrestler, not as good as I thought. Like, he tried to out-wrestle Ode Osborne, and he actually got out-wrestled himself. And that was one narrative that they were, the commentary team and himself was talking about, him wrestling, getting on top as part of his game plan, and it just wasn't the case. And I have no clue about Johnson. Like, one fight he looks sensational, next fight I don't want to say looks like trash. He one fight he looks like, wow, we got like a top 15 guy. Like, this guy's good. And the other one's like, oh, no, he still has some holes. And I'm starting to come around on Durden a little bit. He hits hard. He's a solid wrestler. I do think this is a step up in competition for him. I definitely think Johnson has faced the tougher guys. Hold on. He's beaten. He hasn't faced better guys. He's beaten better guys than Durden has so far beaten in the UFC. I'm really on the fence with this one. Durden hits harder, and he's probably the better wrestler. Though I do think Johnson has more tools. I think we have a war on our hands, which, it's flyweight, that happens. But due to the power advantage and the wrestling advantage, I'm going to go with the slight upset. I'm going to go with Durden. Give me Durden by decision.
I'm with you, man. For all the reasons you mentioned, and I feel like I say this every single time Charles Johnson fights. Like, he debuted in the UFC against Muhammad Mokaev, and you and I both said he's going to lose to Mokaev, and he's probably going to lose bad, but he's a good addition to the UFC, and it's going to be good that he's here. And I feel as though I've said something to that effect every time he's fought since then. He's fought, like you said, he's beaten better fighters in the UFC than Durden has, and they both fought a tough slate of competition.
Yeah, now I'm looking at
Johnson is still the only guy to make it to the final horn against Muhammad Mokaev in the UFC, as far as I remember.
That's impressive.
But here, I'm with you. Durden's aggression and his power and the way that's going to play against Johnson's striking defense leads me to believe that Durden's probably going to be a round winner here. Like, if we don't get any huge moments of offense, if we don't get a finish, obviously Durden's likely to win rounds. He's going to be the guy coming forward. He swings hard. Obviously, if he hits, that's really going to hurt. But Johnson, even just like slipping punches and stuff as Durden's backing him up, isn't going to be a good look for the judges. So give me Durden by decision here as well. But this should be a really fun fight. One of those ones that maybe deserves fight of the night, whether it ends up winning it or not. Next up, the lightweights take the cage, as it is Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. Levy, the 31-year-old Israeli by way of Las Vegas, is 8-1 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 2-1 since joining the UFC out of the fourth season of Dana White's Contender Series, the 2020 season. He debuted with a loss to Rafa Garcia. Since then, he has strung together back-to-back wins over Mike Breeden and Genaro Valdez. The most recent of those, the Valdez win, was a unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN Thompson versus Holland last December. He will look to make it 3 in a row at the expense of Rodriguez. The 26-year-old Arizona native is 5-1 overall. He is 1-1 in the UFC. Debuted last January at UFC 270. Pretty big ask. They threw him in there against Jack Della Maddalena. He made it all of 3 minutes before getting TKO'd. He came back in October against my good friend Mike Jackson. Rodriguez became Jake Shields' favorite fighter by knocking Jackson out cold in about a minute and a half.
Just talking about extreme differences, going from Maddalena to Mike Jackson.
Yeah, okay. You go from probably one of the 8 or 9 best welterweights in the UFC to Mike was the worst welterweight in the UFC. All right. Anyway, enough about the welterweights, because this is Rodriguez dropping to the weight class where he has felt he belonged all along, 155. And he's going to go out there and try to prove it against Levy. He is not favored to get it done. Rodriguez plus 225 or so. Levy minus 275 is one of the bigger favorites on the card. And I gotta tell you, Pete Rodriguez, if this was like 2005 and Mike Goldberg was introducing these fighters, this would be one of those fights where he's like, Natan Levy is a former Israeli national judo champ who did this, this, and that.
Yeah.
Pete Rodriguez has very heavy hands.
That was a good impression. That was a really good impression.
Thank you. Very heavy hands is like what he had to say.
Coming up next.
Yeah. That's what Goldberg would always say when you're a guy who's pretty fresh out of the regionals. He had a bunch of knockouts there and he's not sure whether you're actually any good or not. That's how I feel about Pete Rodriguez. Now, having said that, he's 26 now. You know, he was 25 last time he fought. He's 26. Plenty of upside. He's dropping to a weight class that I think will be more appropriate for his build. Because honestly, at 170, he looked like a slightly pudgy welterweight or lightweight. You know, he looked like he could lose a few pounds. So I'm interested to see how he looks here. But out of him, I do see that he hits stupid hard, but he has a pretty limited repertoire of ways to get that power onto somebody's chin. He's going against a guy in Levy that's going to be naturally bigger. Is a fairly rudimentary striker himself, but I think Levy will probably be able to get Rodriguez to the ground. I don't have a good idea of what his ground game looks like because none of his fights have gone to the ground unless somebody was already badly hurt. So I have no idea what his defensive wrestling really looks like because the only people that have tried to take him down like had their brains knocked halfway out of their skull at the time. So in the presence of a ton of unknowns, I understand why Levy is such a strong favorite, but if Rodriguez goes out there and plunks him in the first round, I won't be that shocked, but I don't think that's the main chance. I think the main chance here is that Levy is able to guard his chin. He takes Rodriguez down, and it turns out that Rodriguez can be exploited on the ground. Give me Levy by a second round stoppage. Could be a TKO on the ground, could be a submission. I'll say TKO ground and pound in the second round, but definitely learn a lot about both guys here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'll start with Rodriguez. Same exact thing, everything you said. I mean, he's got 4 stoppage wins in the first round. We've only seen him go past the first round once in his career, so there's not a lot of tape on him. And then it's like you said, it's extremes. Like to say, hey, he's not as good as Jack Maddalena, but he's better than Mike Jackson.
That's literally all but about 10 welterweights on the entire planet. Like
that saves about I don't know 2 billion people. Like somewhere between those two guys. It's like be like, oh yeah, the guy lives in America, somewhere between Maine and Hawaii.
Yeah.
He's very aggressive. He's got some tight boxing. He cuts angles well. I love that he works the body. He switches stance in the mid-com, which I like. He hits ridiculously hard. For first round stoppages. And obviously I'm a little worried about his cardio because, we mentioned only one fight going past the first round. And again, like you said, I don't know jack shit about his ground game. Levy, southpaw, he's got a very karate style. Hangs his hands low, which he might want to change going against someone like Rodriguez. But he's got quick hands. I like his straight left. I like his check right hook when he gets pressured. He throws a lot of combinations. I'd say he has plus power. He tends to load up a little bit, making it easy to see the power punches coming. He also throws a lot of stupid spinning attacks. He's very athletic, so it flows a lot better for him than other people, but that's something I'd be worried against someone like Rodriguez. He does something like that, then all of a sudden he eats a right hand and he's out. He loves his kicks. He's got like a hook kick, an axe kick that is kind of pointless, but he likes teep kicks, which he's used a lot against wrestlers and stuff. He has been rocked in some fights, and you mentioned the wrestling game of it. Like, despite not being known for wrestling, he's a pretty good wrestler.
Yeah.
He's hard to take down. He looks to stop takedowns, and he's got a very submission-based thing where he's looking for guillotines, looking for Kimaras, which helps him get back up if he's taken down. If he's on top, I like that he works position, slowly works. He has some good back takes. He has a submission threat. He can get subs from top and bottom. It's a tough fight because it's so hard to know what we have in Rodriguez. You know, he's fights are short and most of his wins against bums. So because of that, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go with Levy. I'm not high on Levy, but one thing I can say, at least I know he's UFC level, and I'm not sure if I know Rodriguez is UFC level. So again, I think the best avenue of victory is the same way you said, add in a lot of takedowns or stay out of the kicking range, use a lot of movement, make Rodriguez chase him. I kind of think that's what we get. Give me Levy. I'm going to say, again, I don't know enough about Rodriguez, so I'm going to say he makes it all the way to the scorecards. Give me Levy by decision.
All right. Next up at UFC Fight Night 223 is a featherweight matchup between Julian Erosa and Fernando Padilla. Erosa, the 33-year-old Washington State native, is 28-10 overall. He is an even 6-6 across multiple stints in the UFC, but worth noting that he is 5-2 in his most recent run. He is coming off a loss. He got head kicked by Alekseeva at UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Strickland in December. Prior to that, he had been on a 3-fight win streak, those over Charles Jourdain, Steven Peterson, and Hakeem Dawodu. He will look to get things back on track at the expense of Padilla. The 26-year-old Mexican, making a long-delayed UFC debut. He is 14-4 overall. He fought most recently all the way back in May of 2021. It was right here in Houston at Fury Fighting Championships, which was one of the Dana White looking for a fight episodes. He knocked out Cameron Graves in the second round. That got him signed immediately, but he has had visa issues that caused him, I think there were 2 different times he was supposed to debut in the UFC last year and couldn't make it happen. But
no cyst on his ovaries. He's
no cyst on his ovaries. It's interesting. You don't normally think of
that we know of, by the way.
Yeah, that we know of. We have a Canadian fighter on this card that couldn't get into the U.S. with visa issues, and a Mexican fighter who couldn't get in with visa issues.
Yeah, usually it's only one way on that.
but even so, even with Mexican fighters, it's not a real common problem. That's something you're used to hearing from. Oh, they're from Ukraine or Belarus or Russia or something.
True.
Yeah, like Fernando, there's ways to get in here. Believe me, I live in Houston.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Erosa is a moderate favorite here. He's -170. Padilla +140 on the comeback. A couple things to say. I'm excited that Fernando Padilla is in the UFC. He's a whole lot of fun. I mean, I saw his last fight in person against Cameron Graves. Cameron Graves is a good fighter. Cameron Graves is someone that I would, if you'd asked me in 2019 or so, I would have said he'd have been in the UFC or at least on the Contender Series by now. He's a guy, he's an Alex Morono guy at Gracie Baja Woodlands. Very good fighter, and Padilla plastered him. Prior to that, he plastered Nate Richardson, who's also a good regional fighter. Yeah. And at the time he beat Graves, I mean, he was just barely 25 years old. He's still just 26. There are some things, like in terms of physicality, it's going to be like a mirror match because Erosa is an impossibly huge featherweight. Yeah. So is Padilla.
Yeah.
But that's where the similarities.
It's like the theme of this card. There's a lot of like tall guys on this and gals on this card.
To the point that we didn't even really say anything about Cody Durden versus Charles Johnson, and either of those guys would have been the biggest flyweight in the UFC like 5 years ago.
Yeah, Charles Johnson's huge.
Charles Johnson's huge, and Durden is listed at 5'8", and he's not it's ridiculous. We got Irina Alekseeva, the torture victim, like stretched out Gumby woman. That's what, dude. She's built like Gumby because Gumby has like those little short legs, and then this huge long.
We haven't even talked about who's the guy who just got added? Waters, 6'5", welterweight.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk about Trey Waters. Anyway, Julian Erosa. The fun thing about Julian Erosa is that you don't have to be 6'1" to head kick him. He's going to set a UFC record for most head kick losses to people like much shorter than him at some point. I mean, at this point, he's gotten head kicked by Alekseeva and Julio Arce, neither of whom are like nearly his size. And
Caceres is pretty big, though.
Caceres is pretty big.
Arce isn't.
but Caceres might be 6'1" with the afro, you know, kind of like Fletch.
Okay, fair enough.
Like afro and the afro pick. But that goes to Erosa's main problem, which is that he is hyper aggressive and he's just coming in with his head on the center line, chin way up in the air. It's a tall man thing, whether you're tall for your weight class, like, you know, Charles Johnson, or you're tall for your weight class like Stefan Struve. I don't know if they just think that people can't reach them because they're way up there, but they can reach you. That's Julian Erosa. Dude, it's so impressive how good he's been since he's been back. He's still Julian Erosa. He is still the UFC's ultimate distributor of highlights to both his and his opponent's highlight reels. But dude, a 3-fight win streak over Charles Jourdain, Steven Peterson, and Hakeem Dawodu is legit as hell.
That's a great run.
Like the worst of those, Steven Peterson, like the worst of them, Steven Peterson is a dead average featherweight in the UFC, and Jourdain and Dawodu are both guys that are like top 15 talents who are a little inconsistent.
Yeah, solid.
Like, since he's been back in the UFC, you know, he's lost 3, won 1, or sorry, won 3, lost 1, won 3, lost 1, and winning 3 and losing 1 in the UFC featherweight division, you'll never get to the rankings. You got to string together like just too many wins in a row. So we know what we got in Julian Erosa, a guy that's going to pick up a lot of bonuses. He is a hell of a lot of fun, but I think he's kind of a known quantity at this point. Though I say that, and you know what? Before this last time he came back to the UFC, he was up there with your Chase Sherman types for the most futile runs in the UFC. He comes back and all of a sudden, you know, he's just a lot better. So who knows? But I'm excited to see what we have in Padilla here. Padilla is also very aggressive. I feel as though he's a little more defensively sound than Erosa. I do. Yes, everybody is more defensively sound than Julian Erosa. I'm interested to see if he's a better fighter. As you are fond of saying, that age, you know, really up till about 25, 26 or so for most fighters is one where they can make huge strides from one fight to the next. He's been off for almost 2 years now, and he's been scheduled for fights. So, you know, he's at least been in camps. I'm interested to see what improvements, if any, there are in his game. Because right now, like, he's not perfectly defensively sound, but you know, he's been super durable even in his losses. You know, he's gotten out wrestled by people. You know, got out wrestled some by Spike Carlisle, but not really been hurt, not really been in danger of being submitted. Julian Erosa is going to make him walk through fire, but I'm actually going to go with the upset here. I'm counting on Padilla to be at least the fighter he was 2 years ago. And again, I've seen Padilla really take fighters that I know to be good to the woodshed. So I think he makes a successful UFC debut here. And if he beats Julian Erosa, it's not going to be some ho-hum decision. It's going to be something spectacular. So give me Padilla by first round knockout. And just understand that that's not because I think he's 10 times as good as Erosa, because the other most likely outcome is Erosa getting a first round knockout or submission. But yeah, give me Padilla by first round knockout.
Wow, going against that's your boy too, Julian Erosa. That's your boy.
I love Julian Erosa.
Like, I know you do. Yeah. I think we both do, but you really love Julian Erosa. Yeah, nice drop of Spike Carlisle. Like, what do you think Spike Carlisle is doing right now?
Getting ready to fight. God, where did he sign? Did he end up?
Is he with Bellator?
Yeah, I think he's over in Bellator. He just fought AJ McKee a year ago.
He's not. Like, I don't see him. Like, I see him like in his car in a parking lot of like. No,
still wearing that Hulk Hogan shit that he walked out to the cage.
Okay.
Against AJ McKee, but go ahead.
Like, he's got like a Monster energy drink in his hand.
Oh yeah.
With music at midnight, music absolute blast into the most like headbanging. He's got one of those stretch weight things that they had in like the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Like that the guy in the Goonies got tied up in. You know, and he's parked in a parking lot of like a Lowe's, just drinking a Monster Energy drink just for no reason. Anyways, back to this fight. All right. Julian, you know what? Julian Erosa might be drinking a Monster Energy drink too right now. Like that guy, Julian Erosa he's just so much fun. I mean, when we think about, yeah, of course, Justin Gaethje, he's the head guy for excitement. He's the mecca. He's your Mount Everest. I don't know what like the second, third, fourth highest mountains in the world are, but that's like him. It's like it's still a hell of a mountain. You mentioned it. He's huge for the weight class, long and lengthy. He has a 76-inch reach. Good grief. Constantly switching stances. But the thing about him about switching stances, it's not just like a strategy thing. It's just like he's just got so much energy in him. He's switching stances, great output. He's beating really good fighters with just pressure. I mean, you look at his comeback against Sean Woodson. I think it was probably an upset at the time over Charles Jourdain. It was definitely an upset when he beat Hakeem Dawodu. He looked great against Hakeem Dawodu. It was probably the best in his career. He landed a lot of power shots, hurt him a bunch of times. He's a good like rangy kicker, like throwing kicks from like when he's far away, just throws the kicks to close the distance. Good teep kicks, insane toughness. I mean, he's willing to like get in a brawl in the pocket and trusting his chin. And usually the chin holds. I shouldn't say usually holds because he's been knocked out a bunch of times, but he's been knocked out I think 5 or 6 times in his career. But the last one, Alex Caceres, that's concerning. Dude, especially
four of his last 5 UFC losses have been by knockout.
Yeah, but that's like he lives by the sword, dies by the sword. That's the ultimate guy. Mm-hmm. He's a good offensive wrestler, bad defense wrestler. It's like night and day. His offense and the defense, and he makes it worse by jumping guillotine. He does look for subs off his back while he's scrambling. He showed off his wrestling, taking Dawodu down a bunch of times, and Dawodu's a underrated wrestler himself, and he's the ultimate cardio is weapon guy. He just doesn't stop. I'm going to disagree a little bit when you say that their fighting style, and you talked about their physique, like their physique is like long guys. You said they fight differently. I agree and I disagree. I agree in the sense where Padilla is very controlled and Erosa isn't, but volume is a huge part of both of their games. So that's like the where I say I disagree. It's just way different. It'd be 2 quarterbacks where they're throwing it every down, but one guy's throwing 30-yard bombs, the other guy's West Coast and 5-yard passes, and Padilla's your 5-yard pass guy. He marches down his opponent with good volume, just doesn't stop working. He's an accurate boxer, uses feints really well, tight, everything's tight inside, just kind of touches, waiting for openings until he loads some big shots. I love his left hook. I like that he really parries with his front hand fighting to get his range. He lacks head movement, which is concerning. He also throws naked leg kicks, but in fairness, he doesn't throw a lot of leg kicks. So he did something he does need to clean up. He's strong inside. He gets in the plum clinch, brutalizes guys. Good dirty boxing inside. He's at like that tall man's dirty boxing where he just snaps down on the back of your head, and it's hard because of the angle he comes at you. His last fight, credible, like elbow KO to end the fight, and that was beautiful. He's not much of a wrestler, and he's definitely a weaker defense role, but he's got some submissions. He's got 8 submissions on his record. I think this is a really tough fight. What would you say the odds were?
Erosa minus 170, Padilla plus 140.
Oh, okay. That's a little closer than I thought it would be. I thought Erosa would be a bigger favorite. I always liked Erosa. I mean, he's definitely one of our guys. His volume is incredible. But the decline might be starting. I mean, you can't take the amount of damage he has for years. He looked a little bit slower against Caceres after just coming off like the best win of his career. So yeah, we're in agreement again on upsets. I'm going Padilla in an upset. I think he's going to take the fight to Erosa, and he's going to be Erosa volume. Erosa doesn't want to fight off his back foot, and I think that's really what's going to come down to this fight. Who's fighting off their back foot? I think we have a war on our hands. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I'm going to say Padilla wins by split decision.
All right. And I have to add, just so that nobody kills us in the comment section, the older brother in Goonies that was using the stretchy weight thing, That's Josh Brolin, dude. Like future Academy Award nominee, No Country for Old Men, Thanos in the Avengers. That is Josh freaking Brolin wearing shorts over top of his gray sweatpants and working out with this stupid stretchy thing. Unbelievable. But there you go. It was Josh Brolin.
Okay. Hey, if anybody has a connection with Josh Brolin, we will have him on the recap. If Josh Brolin wants to come in, we'll go 3-person. We'll do it. Actually, we'll do this. We'll send that invitation to anybody who was in the Goonies.
Anybody?
Or
Sean Astin, get at us, man.
Yeah, Sean absolutely. Oh, my kid who loves Lord of the Rings would absolutely flip if that happened. He's got to drop a line from Rudy or something for me. I'll even extend this invitation even more to the recap. One, not only can you go to get someone from the Goonies, but if you can go where the Goonies was filmed, like that little. I think it's in Oregon.
Astoria, Oregon.
Yeah, and you got the little mountain. If you want to film and that's your background, then you'll be on the show.
There you go. Journey Newson, get at us, man. I know we just picked you to lose, but if you win, come tell us how wrong we were. Next up at UFC Vegas 72, one of these guys used to weigh 185 pounds. The other used to weigh 385. They meet in the middle. It is Martin Buday versus Jake Collier. Buday, the 31-year-old Slovakian, is 11-1 as a professional mixed martial artist. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He won a technical decision over Chris Huggy Bear Barnett last April at UFC on ESPN Luque versus Muhammad. Came back and took a split decision over Lucas Dresky at UFC on ESPN Vera versus Cruz in August. So he'll be looking to make it 3 in a row in the UFC, which, as we've said many times, that practically gets you to the doorstep of the top 10 in the UFC heavyweight division. Standing in his way will be Collier. The 34-year-old Missouri native is 13-8 overall. He's 5-7 in the UFC, but that reflects fights at middleweight, light heavyweight, and now heavyweight. Since moving up to heavyweight, he is 2-4, and he is on a 2-fight losing streak. He has a split decision loss to Andrei Arlovsky last April and a second-round TKO loss to the aforementioned Barnett in September at UFC 279. So Buday looking to make it 3 in a row. Collier looking to make it not 3 in a row, going the other way. Incredibly, considering the opposing trajectories of these two gentlemen, this fight is a dead pick'em. -110, -110, or -115. Again, just depending on your betting outlet of choice. Keith, if you asked me a year ago, like certainly if you asked me, a year ago, right ahead of the Arlovsky fight, coming off of the Chase Sherman fight where he just trucked Sherman on the ground, I would have said, forget the eyeball test. Collier works at heavyweight. He's literally his light heavyweight self with just obviously 40 extra pounds of jiggle on him. Yeah. He's the bad Tinder date of UFC fighters, but
that's nice.
Like, especially because we had one of his old weigh-in photos as his profile photo on the Fight Finder. Yeah, and he looked like Stephen Thompson. Like he was flexing like this, little blonde crew cut, and he had such a six-pack that he had a split between the six-pack like George St. fucking Pierre.
He's the girl who only takes the pictures from like the top angle. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. The classic Facebook top angle, and one step from the Facebook girl that now only puts pictures of her kids. There's no angle. Her arm isn't long enough.
Yeah, or the last photo, you look at the date and it's like that picture was 2012. What's going? You ever take another picture in 10 years to 11 years?
Anyway, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said, Collier, it looks like a punchline, but he's actually very nimble and light on his feet. He throws good volume. He has above average cardio for a heavyweight. This works. This doesn't work anymore. He got Arlovsky'd in April, and Arlovsky's gonna Arlovsky. A lot of people just still get frozen in, broken Xbox controller fights with Andrei Arlovsky in 2022, 2023. But then he got lamped by Chris Barnett, which Chris Barnett is a whole lot of fun. Yeah. But if he does that to you,
You suck.
There you go. Keith keeps it real. I mean, you are Jean Vellante or you're Jake Collier. Like it's Chris Brundage should not be able to do that to people in the UFC, and he still is. So I'm surprised this is a pick'em, because whatever else you may say about the guy, Buday is absolutely freaking huge. Like, and you know, the UFC booth will tell you this when he walks into the cage, that he used to weigh like 360 pounds, and you know, he whittled down to 266. You know what he is? He's Eastern European Ben Rothwell. He's a guy that he looks bigger than other heavyweights. You know, he's just looks like a guy that's like part bear, and he's gonna tower over Collier, and he throws a basic repertoire of punches, and he's likes to use intercepting knees on people that try to change levels. He likes to use knees in the clinch. He's so tall that it's easy for him to knee shorter people in the midsection. I don't discount the possibility that this just turns into such a gassed out slop fest that it's anyone's fight, because the individual rounds are just really hard to score. It turns into like a, you know, Muhammad Usman versus Junior Tafa fight. But I think that's the outside possibility. I think Buday is probably just going to punish Collier. If Collier can take Buday down like he did Chase Sherman, and again, however lumbering he looks on the feet, like Collier was lightning quick on the ground against Sherman, then we might have a different fight on our hands. But I don't think that's the likely thing. I think if Collier wants to box Buday, he's going to be in there against a naturally much bigger guy who probably has better one-shot power. And if he tries to bring him down, I think Buday is just going to be able to shuck him off with pure power, or maybe just knee him in the face for his trouble. So give me Buday here. And this is almost wishful thinking that we don't have to endure another Muhammad Usman type slog. Give me Buday by second round TKO, like before these guys really get tired.
I love when you talk about Jake Collier. You're like, well, if he can do this, what he did to Chase Sherman, it's like everything keeps going back to Chase Sherman. It's like, has any fighter in history made other people look good than or trick bettors and trick people who make predictions and like, oh, did you see what he did, Chase Sherman? He looked fantastic.
No, I mean, Chase Sherman, he's like the evil Bizarro world like version of Julian Erosa. You know, like just like things happen in his fights that don't. You know, like those fighters aren't able to do that ever again. Yeah,
but Chase Sherman also is like the perfect guy that if the UFC needs someone to like wear a Venom shirt for the the new 6 series shirt came out with the special gold lettering, and then just put Chase Sherman as one of the models because that fits, you know,
because he looks like he should be one of the best heavyweights in the world. Yep.
Yeah. Oh man, this fight. What do I have to say about this fight? So Jake Collier,
what you can say about it is it might not be the worst heavyweight fight on this card.
Well, yeah, that's no, I think it is. I'll tell you when we get to our predictions later. I think it is, but I don't know what we can say about Jake Collier. I mean, even though I agree, he definitely his volume fell against Andre Arlovski because that's what Arlovski does. I actually thought he won that fight. And most people on MMA Decisions did, but then he gassed out bad to Chris Barnett and got plunked. So I do think he's a better heavyweight than he is a middleweight. Well, I don't know. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. He'd be much better if he dropped like 25 pounds. Like still be a heavyweight, but not walking around. What was his last weight?
265 on like he was
yeah.
At the limit. Like this is going to be another fight like Greg Hardy versus Juan Adams, where both guys are 266, and it's the heaviest fight you can have in the UFC without blowing weight. Yeah,
he would just be such a better heavyweight if he was like 235, 238, something like that. Especially because the best thing of his game is that early volume he does. He's not a bad boxer. I mean, he's got a high guard defense. He keeps everything tight inside. He's got a nice variety in shots. He's got a busy jab. He attacks with combinations. I like that he mixes up in his combination high and low attacks, so he'll go to the head and then come back with like a hook to the body. So I really like that he works the body. He throws a lot of kicks to the body. He even has a high kick. He can wrestle a little bit, though he definitely doesn't wrestle enough. I don't think he can carry the amount of extra weight that he is. But against Shea Sherman, he wrestled a lot, and his takedowns look pretty good. But cardio, which when he first came back to UFC, looked like a strength of his at heavyweight. It's been an issue now against fighters that he probably shouldn't have lost to. Like talent-wise, he's better. He's more talented than Chris Barnett. He's more talented than Carlos Felipe. But his cardio failed him at both those fights. Martin Buday, you mentioned he's a massive heavyweight. He's very lumbering. He's a bad athlete, but he has pretty good output for a heavyweight. He throws a lot of looping shots, though he does lack power. For a guy who's so big, he's not a power hitter.
Rothwell again.
Yeah, yeah.
More volume, less power than you'd expect.
Yeah, I think Rothwell hits a lot harder than he does. But Buday, he throws like 2 fights ago he was throwing straight shots and then last one I think he was trying to add power, so he was throwing a lot of looping shots. I'm not sure which guy he is. He also pulls his punches a little bit, like he pulls back trying to avoid shots, and that's because he keeps his chin really high in the air and he backs straight up. He likes to work in the clinch, get to the clinch, wear on his foe. That's a position I really hope it doesn't happen in this fight, because we could have a really, really boring clinch affair. Both guys slowing down. He closes distance pretty well. He likes to dirty box in the end, knees to the upper thighs, shoulder strikes, like a lot of the boring clinch striking. Though he did beat up Chris Barnett with these, but Chris Barnett's like the shortest heavyweight ever, so it's a little easier. But he's got good cardio, so I do think Collier has a big speed advantage. I definitely think he actually has the power advantage. I think he's a way better athlete. But Buday has the huge cardio advantage. I think it's very possible that Buday's volume in clinch wrestling just wears Collier down and he gets a stoppage like second or third round. However, I'm going to go the other way. Collier is the more technically sound fighter. I say he wins exchanges. I say he makes a movement. Hopefully he comes in a little lighter. I not expected it, but fingers crossed he comes in a little lighter. I say he hangs on from a late surge Buday, but Collier wins the decision.
All right. A little bit of disagreement in one of the two unranked heavyweight slobber knockers at UFC Vegas 72. We head now to the welterweight division for a matchup between Josh Quinlan and Trey Waters. Quinlan, the 30-year-old American, is 6-0 with 1 no contest overall. He is 1-0 since joining the UFC out of the 2021 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He debuted in the UFC at UFC on ESPN Vera versus Cruz last August, knocked out Jason Witt. In fact, knocked Jason Witt into retirement in just 2 minutes, 9 seconds. Worth noting that Quinlan's appearance on the Contender Series, where he knocked out Logan Urban in just 47 seconds, is actually that no contest. It was overturned after he tested positive for banned performance enhancer clomiphene. So officially on his record as a no contest, but he did impress the head of the Contender Series enough to get his ticket to the UFC. That invitation was not rescinded, and here he is looking for his second straight win. He had been scheduled to take on Angelosa. Losa dropped out on Saturday of the week before, so exactly 1 week's notice. In comes Trey Waters, and there's going to be a certain amount of suspense, at least for me, to see if the largest welterweight on the planet can, in fact, make 170 on 1 week's notice. Waters, 28-year-old Floridian, is 7-1 overall. His one loss was his appearance on the Contender Series. He took on Gabriel Bonfim last September, got choked out late in the first round, kind of a modified Von Flue choke type thing. Obviously was not signed off that loss, so he went back to LFA, where he knocked out Jalen Fuller just a couple weeks ago at LFA 156. So he gets the short notice call up here. He will have fought just basically 15 days apart. Man, Trey Waters is gigantic. When this was announced, he rang a bell from the Contender Series. I had to go back and look. And then I was like, oh, right. He's that 6'5" welterweight. And you look at him, and you kind of jokingly mentioned Corey Hill in between segments, but Corey Hill looked like a skeleton. He looked like what you would have said in 2009 if someone said, show me a 6'4" lightweight. Trey Waters is more like welterweight Johnny Walker, where it's like, where are the extra 30 pounds that this guy is obviously carrying on him? Because he's not that skinny, and he's got like his legs are not sticks. Like
Sean Woodson, where it's like he's not a small guy. Like, he's huge,
yeah,
but he's not skinny either.
That's exactly it. It's a Sean Woodson type thing, and he's not as pretty a pure boxer as Woodson, but his general approach that he wants to use his length and strike from the outside, that holds true for me. He does a lot of the kind of, it's not the pure John Jones or Holly Holmes style oblique kick to the lead leg into the body, but he'll just kind of paw out there with a front kick or a slight turn, like a slight side kick as his rangefinder to keep shorter fighters on the outside. He does try to use his jab a lot. Interestingly, for a guy that is going to have reach and height on absolutely everybody, I saw him overreaching with his jab a lot. It's like, dude, you don't need to lean way out over your feet. Like, your arms are already longer than your opponent's whole body. Like, why do you keep doing this? At some point, that's gonna cost him. Like, some short, compact wrestle boxer is just going to come in over that jab and lamp him with an overhand. But I'm definitely interested to see him in the UFC. I'm not preparing excuses for him in advance, but I'm already thinking, man, for a guy this huge, I would love to have a more ideal setup for a UFC debut than fighting on a week's notice 2 weeks after he had to make 170 for, a fight in LFA. Just for those reasons alone, I'm kind of leaning Quinlan here. Quinlan's aggressive. He hits really hard. He can wrestle. And when he's on top, he's an aggressive ground and pounder. I just expect he's probably going to, either maybe he'll be the guy that makes Waters pay for his defensive lapses on the feet, or maybe he takes him down and punishes him on the ground. Waters can definitely be taken down because he also, throws plenty of kicks, will throw flying knees and stuff, and can just be kind of grabbed and thrown down. He has very long legs. Give me Quinlan here by second round, KO or TKO. Maybe we have a real fun, wild first round where Waters empties the gas tank, knowing he basically has a round to get this done. He's tired by the second round. Quinlan can get a takedown pretty easily, or just start punishing him on the feet. So I'll take Quinlan by second round TKO here. Worth noting, this fight is new enough. It's like 24, 36 hours old as of when we're taping this. I couldn't even find any odds yet, but I expect that Quinlan will come down, as a pretty good favorite here.
Yeah. So kind of, this is a situation that happened. Quinlan, I saw he was going to fight Losa. Just one of the guys I didn't, the fight was already canceled before I started doing a tape study on him. So I wasn't looking at Quinlan. And then right before we set a tape in, I find out Quinlan's back on the card. He's facing Trey Waters, and I got to, scram real quick, try to get some notes on these guys. So fair warning, if you are a bettor and you like to use our picks, well, first of all, shame on you anyways. But second of all, don't follow any of my advice on that. I did not spend, this intro might be longer than the time I spent studying these guys. Quinlan, he's a guy that, he's a bigger guy for the weight class, not like Waters, but he's a big guy. Can fight out of both stance, uses movement really well, a lot of L stepping. I like that he slides in the pocket and lets, big shots, quick hands, though he can kind of like wing his shots a little bit. He can crack. He's got big power. We saw that against Jason Witt. Hard calf kicks. He wants to be the one marching forward. He doesn't like being pressured back. Not much of an offensive wrestler, though he is hard to take down. And he's got 2 submission wins. Now, Waters, you mentioned it, the dude's 6'5". And I see some listed 6'4", some listed 6'5". I don't know exactly. I don't think it matters. He's huge welterweight, very fast hands. He hits really hard. His last win, I was able to watch that real quick before this taping of the show. His walk-off KO was absolutely, it was one of the best knockouts of the year so far. It's beautiful. He does keep his hands low, which is concerning, and he's a counter striker, really relies on slip and rip and style. He has some hard calf kicks, but really low output in his last fight. He was actually hurt in that fight too early, and he was losing when he got the walk-off at that point. He has 3 submission wins on his record. I have zero confidence in my pick. Like I said, I like your prediction, a lot of the similar notes. I'm really worried about, cutting weight again, especially on, I think I found out today on Sunday, so that gives him 5 days. I'm sure he probably got a couple more days before that, but still a week's notice. I say Quinlan beats him with volume early. I think he outstrikes him. I think he beats him to the points of contact, and I think he might stop him. Quinlan can crack, so I'm gonna say Quinlan might get a stoppage. Give me Quinlan. You said second round. I'll go third round. I'll say Quinlan third round knockout.
Next up, the heavyweights take the cage again, and it is another matchup that appears to be conceived as much as a structural test of the octagon as an actual matchup in the heavyweight division, as it is Marcos Rogerio de Lima and Waldo Cortes-Acosta. De Lima, the 37-year-old Brazilian, is 28-1 overall. He is 9-6 in the UFC. He's 5-3 since moving up to heavyweight. Do not adjust your television or computer screen when you see this man walk into the cage, but he did, in fact, have a solid run in the UFC at light heavyweight, and now he is an absolute tank of a man. At any rate, he won his last time out. It was a first-round submission of Andrei Arlovski at UFC Fight Night Cater versus Allen in October. Prior to that, he had dropped a unanimous decision to Blagoy Ivanov at UFC 274 in May. He will look to make it 2 wins in a row against Cortes-Acosta. The 31-year-old Panamanian is perfect 9-0 in his mixed martial arts career. He is 2-0 since joining the UFC out of the 2022 season of Dana White's Contender Series. He knocked out Danilo Suzarte on the show to win his way into the UFC. Since then, he has unanimous decision wins over Jared Vandera and Chase Sherman. The most recent of those, the Sherman fight, was at UFC Fight Night, Zechikwu versus Kudalaba in November. So he'll be looking to keep his professional record spotless, look to make it 3 straight to open his UFC run. He is not favored to do so. De Lima is minus 150 as the favorite. Cortes-Acosta plus 130 on the comeback. Keith, this is another fight kind of like Buday versus Collier, where it's one guy that you look at him and it's hard to believe he ever fought below heavyweight. And then you look at the other guy and you know that there's no way he ever fought below heavyweight, because Waldo Cortes-Acosta is another absolutely gigantic guy. Marcos Rogerio de Lima, he's shorter and more compact, but at this point, he walks into the cage at 260.
Yeah, he's a big dude
every time. He made the jump. He went from fighting at 205 to his first fight at heavyweight. I think he was 255. It was just instant.
A little different than Collier did.
A little different than Collier. I mean,
one guy hit the weight room and one hit the snack bar.
Well, you've got a continuum. You got Collier on one end, you got Linton Vassell on the other, and Marcos de Lima's right in the middle.
Okay, fair enough.
Where all they did to Linton Vassell was they added a couple drops of water, and he just kind of like grew to twice his size. Yeah. De Lima, he put a little jiggle on, but honestly, the move up to heavyweight accentuated the things that are good about De Lima, because I mean, he's a hard-hitting kickboxer. He has good hand speed. He has really, really good kicks, and heavyweight just has fewer people able to deal with that. And it has at least slightly covered up his big weakness. For the longest time, I've always held him right up there with Greg Hardy as this guy has the worst ground game in the UFC. I have to revise that slightly since he just ran over Andrei Arlovski on the ground.
Yeah, I was just saying he's bad on bottom. He's not a bad grappler overall.
Yeah, well, he's got a black belt, and we got to see it in action against Arlovski.
Is it Nigger black belt?
Yeah.
Did he get in his Happy Meal?
Well, they got him 15 Happy Meals and said you got to find it. and he just ate them all.
Yeah,
that
Charlie
was
Chocolate Factory style.
Yeah, Charlie. He's the Augustus Gloop.
No. The Gusty Gloop is Collier. He went Gusty Gloop. Like, he might have went a little. Rogerio's like the TV guy or something. He's been watching lots of TV, but.
I mean, Marcos Rogerio de Lima, still a bad defensive wrestler, still absolutely hapless off his back, but obviously against Arlovsky, he didn't need to take him down. They just sort of collided. He hurt Arlovsky, then was on top of him, but he sliced through Arlovsky's guard like it was nothing, took his back, choked him out. So obviously he has a flawed ground game, but there are things he can do well. I understand why he's favored against Acosta. Acosta is that type of fighter where, I said about heavyweight before, all you need to be a solid heavyweight and stick around the UFC, and maybe not get ranked, but stick around for a long time, is have one or two tools and the aggression to be willing to put them to use. He's the rare heavyweight that throws a pretty good jab and throws it enough. You'd think in a division where almost everybody has knockout power, you'd want to learn like a solid jab and some footwork, but everyone just wants to kind of wade in and slug. Here, I'm not sure it'll work in Cortes-Acosta's favor because he's going to be against a guy that's, I think, going to be a lot faster than him on the feet and is going to be kicking at his legs hard immediately. Cortes-Acosta is kind of heavy on the front foot, like, you expect of a boxer. And I think de Lima is going to be sawing him up with kicks to the legs, maybe start kicking to the body. He certainly has the potential to like slip the jab and hit him with punches. De Lima's punches they're not as celebrated as his kicks, but he's a good hard puncher. If this goes to the ground, obviously all bets are off. If Cortes-Acosta just lands on top, this fight's probably over. And I say that not really knowing much about his ground game, but if he's on top of de Lima, he's probably going to win this fight. I've seen Marcos Rogerio de Lima tap to nothing in the UFC, like it was UFC 4 or something. He's just tapped to like a forearm across the face. So that's going to be there for Acosta if he ends up on top, but I'm picking against that. Give me de Lima to win a decision here, and I'm hoping we get to sort of a steady kickboxing match, not a wild first round that gives way to just 2 rounds of death, but give me de Lima by decision.
Yeah, this fight, there's a lot of question marks about this fight. De Lima, you mentioned massive heavyweight. You call him a kickboxer. He's a brawler. Like he's you said you want a kickboxing match. That's not what de Lima does. He gets in the pocket. He throws bombs, haymakers. Got some good power. He's got 13 knockouts. He blasted a guy like Rothwell. He's got thudding leg kicks. He is a BJJ black belt. You mentioned he looked like a white belt against Alexander Romanov as he got fat guy bully choked. But then he submitted Andrei Arlovsky, which, completely baffles me on where he stands. He showed decent cardio against Ivanov, which I like for a guy, pushing 265. Acosta, he's probably one of the best boxers in the division, like pure boxing. I'm not saying, MMA striking. If you put on the boxing gloves, he'd do really well. Good volume, has a nice jab, sets up his power shots with feints, clean shots in the pocket. He tends to he'll throw straight shots and then he'll also change it up and throw a whipping shot that he likes to wrap around his opponent's defense. If they kind of go with a high guard defense, he wraps it around, which I like. I love that he goes to the body. He's got good power when he sits down on his punches, but because of such a boxing heavy base style, he's really heavy on that front foot. So Chase Sherman had a lot of success kicking him. So did Jared Vandera, kicking his legs. He keeps his chin really high in the air, which is concerning. He was taken down by Chase Sherman, but I haven't seen enough of his ground game to kind of judge him. I do think it's on the poorer side from what I've seen, but again, it's I think the verdict's still out on that. I'm with you. I'm going to go with de Lima. I think he might go the other route and realize, he might swing for the fences against Acosta and get tagged up a little bit. but I think eventually I think he's gonna get the fight to the ground. I think he's showed that he's got something against Arlovski. Maybe he does it again. I think he gets Acosta down. That's your best avenue for victory. And I'm gonna say he catches a sub again. I'm gonna say he's something in the very first round. Give me De Lima by first round submission.
And we'll be talking about the new De Lima, kind of like wrestler Vitor in kind of like the early to mid 2000s. Oh man, if we're all of a sudden talking about like the old lion, young dinosaur, Marcos Rogerio De Lima,
there you go.
I'll need to rethink all my life choices. Third from the top of the UFC Vegas 72 main card, at least as the bout order is currently constituted, is a middleweight matchup between Rodolfo Vieira and Cody Brundage. Vieira, the 33-year-old Brazilian, is 8-2 overall. He is 3-2 since joining the UFC back in 2019. He is coming off a loss. It was a unanimous decision against Chris Curtis at UFC on ESPN, Sarukian versus Gamrot last June. Prior to that, he had not fought since summer of 2021 when he choked out Dustin Stoltzfus in the third round. So Vieira will be looking to get back on track here against Brundage. The 28-year-old Michigan native is 8-3 overall. He is 2-2 since joining the UFC as a veteran of the 2020 season of Dana White's Contender Series, though he lost on the Contender Series, got knocked out by William Knight, so went back and won one more fight in LFA, then joined the UFC, where he has split wins and losses evenly. He's coming off a loss. It was a first-round knockout at the hands of Michal Oleksiejczuk, whom we'll be talking about in a few minutes, at UFC Fight Night Cannonier versus Strickland in December. So Brundage looking to get back on track. Vieira looking to get back on track as well. Vieira is heavily favored to get it done. He is minus 280, Brundage plus 210. Man, Rodolfo Vieira, and I say this, I think, every time we preview one of his fights, which unfortunately is about once a year at this point, he's right up there on the Mount Rushmore of the most accomplished Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners to cross over to MMA in or near his physical prime. He's the 2015 Abu Dhabi Combat Club gold medalist. He has 7 Mundials medals, 5 gold, including 1 year where he won his weight class and won the absolute. You know, he was one of the very, very best grapplers in his weight range of his era. And he moved over to MMA when he was not even 30 yet. That's, I mean, about as good as you can ask for.
Yeah.
Having said that, the results have been mixed since then. Like when you look at it now, everyone remembers the Anthony Hernandez fight very famously because it was the biggest upset of 2021 in terms of the optics, if not the odds. You know, where one of the greatest grapplers in the world gets guillotined by a pretty good grappler who's not remotely close to being ranked. It was a look. But now, for me, the Chris Curtis loss was much more discouraging because if he wasn't 0 for, he was close to 0 for his takedowns against a guy that looked 2 full weight classes smaller than him and wanted to box. Like if Rodolfo Vieira can't find a way to get his hands on that guy and throw him down on the ground and at least keep him there, if not arm triangle choke him, we've seen his ceiling, and his ceiling is outside the top 15. And now you're like, okay, his other UFC fights, all 3 of them are wins. All 3 of them were very dominant submissions, but they're all over guys that aren't in the UFC anymore. And in the case of Dustin Stoltzfus, another guy that probably should have been fighting a weight class below him. So it's unfortunate, but I'm not nearly as high on Rodolfo Vieira now at age 33 as I was at age 29 or whenever he came over. He looks like a great grappler who has limited avenues to be able to leverage that grappling against UFC quality fighters, even ones who are not grappling specialists themselves. Like I had hoped he would turn into a Jacare type, a guy with just the raw power and athleticism to develop a good wrestling game, but he really hasn't. His gas tank continues to be a liability. It's not fall off a cliff dead like it was against Anthony Hernandez, but you know, it was not his friend in the Chris Curtis fight. Having said all that, Cody Brundage is a fighter who may give Rodolfo Vieira the fight he wants and needs in order to win in the UFC. You know, if there is somebody at UFC level that Rodolfo Vieira is tailor-made for, or is tailor-made for him, it's a wrestle boxer, and that's Cody Brundage. Brundage, to do what he wants is, I mean, the idea of taking down Vieira, he probably shouldn't consider that unless Vieira is really, really tired and hurt. So that shuts off half of Brundage's game right there. And the other half is mostly conducted in boxing range, which I think is going to be kind of danger zone against Vieira. Brundage just isn't as fast on his feet, doesn't have as good footwork as Chris Curtis. So I think this is kind of Vieira's fight to win. Give me Vieira to get a first round submission here. Just, Brundage is going to be close enough. Vieira is going to be able to get him to the ground, and from there, go to work. Brundage is really tough. I think he's an underrated grappler. He's very physically strong, but yeah, I think this plays really well into Vieira's strengths. I got Vieira in this one, first round sub.
Yeah, this is the. I don't want to say he has his back against the wall, but this is definitely crunch time for Rodolfo Vieira. He has a little bit of Curtis Blades in him, where he likes to strike a little bit more than he should. He hits hard. I'll give him that. I mean, you look at the guy. The guy is built. Like he's not your skinny, don't have any muscle on you jiu-jitsu guy who wins with flexibility. I mean, he's an athlete.
He's not Chase Hooper.
Yeah, no, he's not Hoist Gracie. Primo. He's jacked.
He's Hickson Gracie, not Hoist Gracie.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
His striking is getting better each fight. I'll give him a little credit for that. He lands on opponents because they're really worried about getting taken down from him. I like his straight right, but he eats a lot of shots because he lacks head movement. I'll give him this. He can take a shot. I mean, not many people can eat shots from Chris Curtis, and he did. He also got blasted by Safarov and Anthony Hernandez. They also landed some big shots on him. His two losses in the UFC, I agree that we had a really high expectations for him, and he hasn't been able to live up to that, and it doesn't look like he's going. But on the flip side, the losses aren't bad. And I get what you're saying about Chris Curtis, like not being able to take down Chris Curtis. But in fairness, Chris Curtis is a stud. And Anthony Hernandez is a guy, I think you'll agree with it. He's much better fighter than people give him credit. I think Anthony Hernandez is a really good fighter.
Yeah.
So I feel it's like you know what Rodolfo Vieira is, to give like another sports analogy. He is your like Alex Smith, where he was a number one overall draft pick. So you're hoping for a other number one draft pick type guys like like a Peyton Manning.
Sure.
He's not Peyton Manning.
Right.
And right now the Europeans are like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But he was still a solid, like Alex Smith had a good career, like a solid, like, yeah, it wasn't, we didn't get a superstar, but like no one got fired. I mean, maybe they did, but like you didn't get fired because you drafted Alex Smith.
No.
You might get fired for other reasons, but not because Alex Smith. So that's kind of feel about like Vieira. He's not a complete bust. He just hasn't lived up to what we expect. Kind of like Aaron Pico in Bellator, where people thought he was going to be the next star, and he's still young enough he actually could still be that. But you get what I'm saying? Like he's not a complete bust. And
everybody likes to laugh at him, but like he's like 8-3 right now. He's a good fighter. Yeah.
10-4 or something like that. Yeah. Even his losses were all like, where how'd that come? One was a shoulder popped out, a collarbone or some shit like that. Another one was like a fight he was winning the whole time. The guy flying knees him. Mm-hmm. What was the other one? He got caught. Obviously he got guillotined in his first fight in like 30 seconds. Yeah, and there was one more where he got caught in a fight that he was winning the whole time, and he just the Hungarian guy. No, that was Aaron. Adam Boric.
Adam Boric.
Yeah. There's another one. Oh, Henry Corrales. Corrales caught him with a shot, but it was like all fights that he was winning. Mm-hmm. Other than the debut, and then Jeremy Kennedy one is so weird. Anyways, I don't know how we get off on Aaron Pico. Rodolfo Vieira, he's a very good wrestler, fast entries. Though he does often telegraph his shots. That's what was happening in Chris Curtis. Really, Curtis could see the shots coming. And that's because he doesn't do enough entries with his striking. He's either striking or he's grappling. He's not mixing them together well. If he does shoot, he's got good drive. He'll drive through your hips, but he doesn't chain wrestle well. So if he's sprawled out on, he's not good at cutting the corner or going to, from single to double down to, cut through or something like that, or a drag slide by. Like, he's not your traditional, wrestler where you can chain them together. Now he's very physically strong, and obviously, we just talked about Jack, but I mean, like, he also, like, he if he in deep on your legs, he likes to pick you up and slam. He likes a little bit of show. Mm-hmm. He's an absolute wizard on the ground. I mean, you talked about his accolades. I'm not going to read them again, but he's elite of the elite. And what you also said, and I wish and I hope we get more of this. He was a guy where he's still in his, it's not the early part of his prime, but he's still in his prime. To have top athletes come over, we don't have that in BJJ. Rodolfo Vieira in amateur wrestling, like a Bo Nickel coming in his prime. Like, we don't have that. So it's nice to see that happening. And based on his style, I still like the comparison I did a long time ago of Ricardo Arona. Like, that's his style, more of a wrestling top game style. But he's gassed out a little bit too, which is concerning. But that happens when you have a guy as jacked as he is. Now, Brundage is a plus athlete that kind of strikes to get in his karate. Striking is kind of like a karate style. He drops his hands. He does throw some big power shots, and he's got good power. I mean, he starts Trishan Gore. I said he has a karate style, and that's because when you see him throw kicks, it's very Stephen Thompson style. Yeah. Kicks everywhere. He likes question mark kicks. He likes that, like, side kick. Despite having wrestling background, I don't think he's as good a wrestler as he should be. He will shoot and get takedowns, but I've mentioned this before, is when he's sprawled out, he doesn't cut angles. He tends to stay on bottom. I mean, Dolce, he had his leg, and he was eating a lot of shots that was unnecessary. If he's on top, he's got a strong game, but his takedown defense isn't rock solid. I mean, Nick Maximoff was hitting some sweet takedowns on him.
And Nick Maximoff was, like, a lot smaller.
Yeah. Despite getting a KO, he was slowing down against Trishan Gore. So I'm with you. I definitely think this is a good stylist matchup for Vieira. One big issue is Brundage throws a lot of kicks, and either Brundage is not going to throw as many kicks because he's worried about Vieira's takedowns, which obviously just right away you've taken one of Brundage's biggest weapons away, or the opposite, he throws a kick and gets caught and he gets taken down. So either way, it really hurts Brundage. Plus, in an actual boxing match, I might favor Vieira if they just stand and throw down in the pocket. So I think he might have the boxing advantage. I think he probably doesn't have the wrestling advantage, but he definitely has the grappling advantage. So I think eventually he gets to the ground, and I say he gets a submission. I'll say Vieira by second round submission.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 223, a middleweight matchup between Caio Borralho and Michal Alekseeva. Borralho, the 30-year-old Brazilian, is 13-1 with one no contest overall. He is 3-0 since joining the UFC as a two-time alum of Dana White's Contender Series. He was on the Contender Series in September of 2021, beat Aaron Jeffrey by unanimous decision. That apparently wasn't enough to get him signed. He came back 3 weeks later and knocked out Jesse Murray. That did the trick. Since then, he has won 3 straight by decision. Gaji Omar Gajiev, Armen Petrosian, and Mahmoud Muradov have all fallen to the Brazilian. The most recent of those, the Muradov fight, was at UFC 280 in October. So Borralho will be looking to make it 4 in a row, looking to extend his overall win streak to, I think, 12, something like that. Standing in his way will be Alekseeva. The 28-year-old Pole is 18-5 with one no contest overall. He is 6-3 with one no contest in the UFC. He is 2-0 since dropping the middleweight. The entire first portion of his UFC run was conducted at 205 pounds. He decided to drop to 185 about a year ago in the wake of a loss to Dustin Jacoby. Since then, he has back-to-back wins over Sam Alvey and Brundage, both in the first round. So back-to-back first-round knockouts. He's got a ways to go to catch up to Sergey Pavlovich's record, but he could make it 3 in a row here. He is not favored to do so, however, as Borralho is another of the biggest favorites on the card. He is minus 300, Alekseeva plus 250. Keith, intriguing matchup here. We've got one guy in Alekseeva that I keep having to remind myself that he's better than I think he is, and that's continued to be the case since he's dropped to middleweight, against a guy in Borralho that has sort of come out of nowhere and made some serious noise in a wide open division. I'm also shocked that Alekseeva is younger. It just feels like Alekseeva should be 34 or 35. He's been in the UFC so long. Yeah. But he's just 28 years old, man. Who wins this? And well, I shouldn't say top 15 upside because these guys are both in the top 15 right now. Do you see like title picture upside for either of these guys?
They're both in our top 15? Or UFC top 15?
They're definitely both in the UFC top 15, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're in ours. I'm not looking at ours right now, but
shout out to the guy who gave me shit a couple of weeks ago, and he was like, "Yeah, Keith always mentions the Sherdog rankings, never knows who's in their rankings." So that was pretty funny. So shout out to that guy.
They're not ranked in our rankings, but
the win could probably. I mean, who's number 15 right now sitting? Or who's our honorable mention?
Gastelum and Curtis are number 14 and 15.
Okay, yeah, I don't have to get over them. And maybe get over Curtis, being Curtis coming off a loss.
And I mean, if Borralho, goes to 4-0 in the UFC, if Alekseeva becomes 3-0 since dropping to middleweight,
there's an argument there. Yeah, there's an argument there. Curtis having a win over Brun Allen, that's still it's tough to get past, and then Gastelum having a win over Curtis is that's tough. I like both these guys. I really do. Borralho is a massive guy. Like how he makes middleweight is insane. You mentioned he beat Aaron Jeffrey and didn't get a contract. Shame on that. Like beating Aaron Jeffrey. Aaron Jeffrey's as good as it gets on the regional scene. Like to like be a guy who's not in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like that's as good of a bar there is.
Really? Yeah, but he was LFA middleweight champ. LFA middleweight champ used to be an automatic ticket to the UFC.
Absolutely. Like any, especially middleweight. Yeah.
Yeah. Like something like 5 of their middleweight champs in a row went straight to the UFC. Like just kind of your Ian Heinisch, Marcus Perez,
Brendan Allen,
Eric
Anders.
Eric Anders.
Anthony Hernandez, and he had the belt.
Anthony Hernandez. Yeah, that was the other one. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a pretty good run right there. Yeah. Now before someone like asks us, what about this guy? I'm not talking about guys who will make the UFC. I mean the guys who are as good as a win that people aren't calling to be in the UFC.
Yeah,
I know some people. But I mean the masses of people.
Right.
And if Jeffrey's is as equal as the worst guy in the UFC. Like,
well, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm not. I don't mean this as a diss on him. I meant that as like that he's a UFC caliber level guy. That's what. So
I mean, Aaron Jeffrey knocked out Austin Vanderford last year. Like,
there you go. Anyway, and Vanderford's not bad. Yeah. So good point. He's a southpaw who he does keep his chin a little too high in the air, which I don't like. But overall, his striking is pretty sharp. He marches forward. He picks apart his opponents from range. He's accurate. I love his straight left. Strong kicking game, like just hard kicks. He loves flying knees. I'd say he's an okay wrestler, more of a grappler than a wrestler, but he's very physically strong that if he takes you down, he's going to hold you down. Good top game. He advances his position slowly, inching at a time, doesn't really rush submissions. Though, in fairness, I have this in my notes based the way he grapples. In his last fight, he actually did rush a little bit against Maradov and lost some positions. On top, he's got some mean ground and pound. He has very like I don't know who I'm thinking of, like a Johnny Walker or like a Bigfoot Silva, when he's ground and pounding, he just like punches through your shield. You know, when you're trying to block him, just muscles through it. He's a weak defensive wrestler, though I have seen him hit some nice sweeps off his back. He's got some slick back takes. He's got those long legs that if he gets on your back, he locks him in and it's hard to get off. He's got 3 sub wins. On bottom, he's a much different grappler. Like he struggled to get off his back and gets murdered off. But he has shown that for such a big guy, I haven't seen him really gas out and see him kind of going hard late. Oleksiejczuk, he's a southpaw who is such an aggressive. Like he's really coming on aggressive on the feet. You know, it's not the best win, but like a perfect example is that when he went against Sam Alvey, he just was cutting the cage off on Sam Alvey. Sam Alvey had nowhere to escape, just overwhelmed him with volume power. He's got some high volume bursts forward with combination. He wings his overhand left where he uses it to kind of close the distance to get to the pocket. And then when he's in the pocket, he's throwing bombs. I like that he goes to the body. He's got really good power. He has a lot of defensive holes. The biggest hole is that he's so aggressive. He just walks through shots. So he's very hittable. He's added a wrinkle of wrestling. Like he looks for reactionary doubles now, but he does struggle to stop takedowns. Now, I do want to point this out, and I've left this in my notes for a while. We might be overreacting because he gave up 8 takedowns to Jimmy Crute. I do believe he's probably improved since then, but we haven't seen him in a heavy grappling matchup yet to really know. And he has been submitted in the past. I like both guys. Borralho, I think, is well-rounded, but he better try to get this fight to the canvas quick. And I'm not saying that he can't win a striking battle with Oleksiejczuk, but you know, that's Oleksiejczuk's number one route to victory is to keep it on the feet and land some hard shots. Oleksiejczuk can crack, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if he starches Borralho. However, until I see him stop takedowns from a good grappler, I'm going to go against him. I'm going to say Borralho gets the fight to the ground, slowly works to a better position and locks in a submission. I say it takes a little bit, but I think eventually he gets it. I'll say Borralho by second round submission.
I love the analysis. I love the breakdown. I hate that one of these guys has to lose because I've come around on Michal Oleksiejczuk, and especially since he's dropped to 185. And obviously beating Sam Alvey in 2022 was no great shakes, but at least the way he did it is the way that you should put away Sam Alvey in 2022. You know, like left nothing to chance, was appropriately aggressive and just got him out of there. The Cody Brundage win was good, but obviously Oleksiejczuk, this will be a huge step up for him. And honestly, I think a solid, I don't know. I don't know if it's a huge step up for Borralho because I was pretty high on Armen Petrosyan as a prospect too, and I thought Mahmoud Muradov was a pretty good fighter. But it's probably a slight step up for Borralho, just in that Oleksiejczuk has some near elite level skills at a UFC level and is much more experienced, and then a huge step up for Oleksiejczuk over the people he's been fighting at 185. I'm glad that he moved down to 185 because one of his biggest problems at 205 was just that he was small. You know, he wanted to box, but, you know, bigger people gave him trouble, whether they wanted to strike with him, like Jacoby, or wanted to wrestle him, like Crute. Like, Crute just looked like a man playing with a child with his takedown game. Like, he just was ragdolling him. It looked like, you know, how it would look like you wrestling with your son and his 8-year-old teammates if you had no chill. Yeah. He is still the author of what would have been the all-time biggest Dude Seriously in the history of the Shillen and Duffy recap, if we were doing recaps by then, because when he took on Open St. Preux, he boxed OSP the hell up despite the huge size disadvantage. Like, he beat OSP badly in the first round. He was doing well in the second round. OSP shot a takedown, and Oleksiejczuk grabbed a guillotine and fell to his butt. Dude, seriously? It's not that he Von Preux choked you. It's that was his fourth. You knew that that's what he did.
And everybody does.
Everybody does. And I know why. It's the panic because you're like, oh, I got to hold on to something or this dude is going to get in my guard and beat the living shit out of me. And they forget about the shoulder choke. But anyway, I think this is a bit too big an ask for Alekseeva. I'm happy with his progress. I'm happy that he's at 185. I wouldn't be that shocked if you told me that, say 2 years from now, Alekseeva is ranked higher in the division than Borralho is. Like, I think he has upside that we haven't truly plumbed yet. He's still adding new wrinkles to his game in a way that Borralho might not be. But right now, this is a big ask. He's going to try to box with Borralho, and Borralho is probably going to want to get this to the ground, and Alekseeva's grappling defense is still a big question mark. So give me Borralho here. I'm going to say it makes it the decision. I'm going to say this is Borralho's 4th straight decision win to open his UFC run. But you know what? That's not a terrible thing. And as you pointed out, for a guy that is built like he is, proving beyond a doubt that he has at least 3 rounds of gas will make it a more attractive prospect to start giving him 5-round fights in the near future, whether that be main events or some kind of title shot. But yeah, give me Borralho by decision here, and I'm looking forward to this one. With that, we come to the makeshift or transplanted main event of UFC Fight Night 223, the bantamweight contenders match between Song Yadong and Ricky Simon that had been scheduled for UFC Vegas 71 last Saturday. It got bumped to this card when the Moicano versus Sarukian main event fell off. Keith and I already previewed this. The only thing that's changed is the calendar date got pushed back by 7 days, and it was changed from a 3-round to a 5-round fight. For what it's worth, the line is effectively the same as it was last week. It's still Simone around -130, -140, Song around +110 or +115. Keith has, and by the way, Keith and I both picked Simone by decision in that one. Spoilers. Keith, has anything changed in the intervening week, or does the additional 2 rounds change how you see this fight to the point that you want to make any amendments to what we said?
Not really. I don't think it really favors either guy. I know Song Yadong, he's gone 5 rounds before, so he
made it to the end of the 4th round against Sandhagen.
Okay.
And that was a headliner. He had a 5-round fight in Wulin Feng back in China, which was a title fight.
Yeah. No, I was thinking Sandhagen, that went to a decision. Song Yadong, I mean, he's got experience, at least scheduled for 5-round fights, and Ricky Simon, like, we haven't seen him in that. He doesn't seem like a guy that would gas out. Like, he has a very like Frankie Edgar style to him, where I think his in a sense it might actually make him even stronger. That grueling grappling style. It didn't affect my pick at all.
I'm with you. I said to you offline when we were getting ready to start here that I think this Saturday it might be our first inkling, the first time we start to realize that Ricky Simon has been built for 5-round fights all along. I agree with you that there's a certain Frankie Edgar energy to him. It's also worth noting that the most controversial result of his career, that non-buzzer beating submission win over
Merab.
Thank you, over Merab Dvalishvili. Part of the problem is that Merab was A, being choked, and B, more tired than Simon by the end, so he was real slow to get up, and that's what led to the whole thing. So, I think I still favor Simon in this one. I don't favor him hugely more than I did before. And also the 1 week extension of these two guys, my guess would be that if either one has a more onerous weight cut, it's Song. So in the like one more tiny little factor category, I would say that slightly favors Simon as well. I would say it's less of an onerous thing for him to say, yeah, sure, I can ride at this weight for another week and just do my water cut a week later, no big deal. Whereas it might be a little bit more of a suffering thing for Song, but that's pure speculation. Based on what we've seen of both guys, yeah, I still slightly favor Simon. Should still be a great fight. Now we just maybe get 2 more rounds of a great fight.
That brings us to the co-main event of UFC Fight Night 222. It is a high-stakes bantamweight matchup between Song Yadong and Ricky Simon. Song, the 25-year-old from China, is 19-7-1 with 1 no contest overall.
He is 8-2-1 in the UFC. He is coming off a loss. He got stopped in between rounds in the headliner of UFC Fight Night 210 last September by Corey Sandhagen. That snapped a 3-fight win streak for him over Casey Kenny, Julio Arce, and Marlon Moraes. Song will look to get back in the win column, look to reestablish himself as a potential title contender in this division against Simone, who is looking to do the same while he continues to extend his impressive winning streak. The 30-year-old Washington State native is 20-3 overall. He is 8-2 since coming to the UFC as an alum of the first season of Dana White's Contender Series, though he was not signed. Wasn't signed immediately because that was the first season and really only one fighter per episode got signed. And after Mike Slow Rodriguez had his moments in the sun, there just wasn't any room for a second signee. However, he did make it to the UFC a bit later, and he is 8-2 ever since. Very famously had the controversial last-second finish over Merab Dvalishvili, but he is on a 5-fight win streak right now. Since his loss to Rob Font all the way back 3 years ago, he has beaten Ray Borg, Gaetano Perello, Brian Kelleher, Rafael Asuncao, and most recently, Jack Shore, whom he handed his first loss at UFC on ABC, Ortega versus Rodriguez last July. So he will look to cap that off with another top 10 win in the form of Song. Keith, I'm going to hand this one off to you. First, I'm going to ask you to guess who the favorite is.
I'm going to guess that this is a trick question and it's a pick 'em.
I would not do that to you. One person is a favorite. Okay, here, I'll the favorite is minus 140. The underdog is plus 110. Who are they?
Oh, man. I have no idea because both guys are really good. Oh, man. I'm going to say, man, I don't know. Yadong is good. Simone's good. I'll go Simone. I'll say Simone's a favorite.
You are correct. Simone is the minus 140 favorite. Song plus 110 on the comeback. You just made it.
I think
you demonstrated for us how close this fight feels. Tell me how you see it playing out.
Yeah, this is an absolute fantastic fight, especially the X's and O's. I really like both guys. I'm not saying that either guy will be a champion one day, but if I don't know where our rankings are right now, but if either of these guys beat I don't know who our 5th ranked guy is. If these guys beat them, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, that's how good I think these guys are. Yadong is really well-rounded. He's a very poised striker with some high output, technically sound. He's a boxer.
Real quick, our 5th ranked guy right now is TJ Dillashaw. I would absolutely take either of them over him right now.
Yeah, that's okay. He's fast hands. He's very accurate. Very short shots, not a lot of tells. Nice snap. Works behind a crisp jab. Attacks with the combos. He is a little bit of a headhunter, which I don't like. But that's about it. Striking. He's really like coming into his power. I mean, he's shown off his power recently. He's got some fast kicks, fast high kick, hard calf kick. He can sneak in a takedown. Not the greatest defensive wrestler, but he's a good overall grappler. He's got 3 submission wins, strong get-up game. He looked really good against like Casey Kenya, a guy who's a wrestler. He's got good cardio. He had a war against Marlon Vera, and he didn't slow down at all in that fight. Now, again, that was up a weight, and it was 145 because I think some weird things happened. I forgot what the situation was, but still, he's there's not a lot of glaring weaknesses when he comes in. Now, Ricky Simone is obviously your classic wrestle boxer, very good athlete, very physically strong. I mean, he's a brute, quick hands. He gets in the pocket and he unloads good shots. He gets there with a lot of feints, feinting up and down, faking his shots. It's been a while now, but to go back to like the Ray Borg fight, he was freezing Ray Borg with feints. It's good output, attacks with combinations, goes to the body and to the head, and he will eat some shots due to his lack of head movement. but he's got a chin and he can get in the pocket. He can brawl, and he showed against Jack Shaw. Like, he's starting to really get some power, and I think that also comes with just he's gaining confidence in his hands. And he's got some thudding leg kicks, and he checks leg kicks himself, which is rare. He's a very good wrestler. Good entries. I love his reaction double against Jack Shaw. Showed the difference between his wrestling and a guy like Shaw, who's a very good wrestler himself. Strong top game. I love that he's committed to the takedown. Like, when he gets you down, you work your way up. He is staying glued on you, making you carry his weight, making you work. He uses every ounce of energy to get back up to your feet. He's not much of a submission threat, but he's one of those wrestlers. He looks for like the head and arm triangle choke. I think this is a fantastic fight. My notes makes me want to go pick Yadong. I mean, he's so fast on the feet. He hits so hard. He's looking better and better every fight. I talk about Ricky Simone's confidence. Like, Yadong's confidence is growing. I can't imagine Ricky Simone. He's so smart. I can't imagine him wanting to test himself on the feet with Yadong. I can't imagine him just not wanting to close the distance immediately and just turn this into a 15-minute wrestling match, which he can do. I'm really torn in this one, but I'm gonna go with Simone. The one thing Yadong hasn't shown me an ability to do is stop takedowns from a high level wrestler, and so I'm gonna go with Simone. Give me Simone by decision.
I'm glad that this one is as hard to pick for you as it is for me. I look at the people that have really given Simone a lot of trouble at the UFC level. I mean, the Uriah Faber fight, he got caught in like 40 seconds, and they fight 10 times. That might be the only time that version of Faber beat Simone.
Absolutely.
He should have lost to Merab Dvalishvili, but Dvalishvili might be the only person in the division that I'm dead sure is a better wrestler than Simone. And it was much earlier in both guys' careers. That really leaves the Rob Font fight. Like, if there is a blueprint for beating Ricky Simone right now, it's what Font did. And I think that might have been the best performance of Font's career. And I don't know if he could do it again now. Like, he got up when Simone took him down early.
Yeah.
He avoided takedowns late. He used footwork to stay at his preferred range and jabbed Simone up for 3 rounds. It was a great performance by Rob Font.
Yeah. Giannis might be his best performance now, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I wiped that out of my mind because Giannis is my guy. But that was the fight. A long time
ago too.
Yeah, but that's the fight that placed Rob Font in my mind as, okay, Rob Font's a top 10 bantamweight. He's a future title contender, and he kept rolling from there. That, of all the things that we've seen Ricky Simone struggle with at the UFC level, that's the one that Song might be able to come closest to. But trying to jab Simone up at range runs contrary to how Song likes to fight. Now, if he can be that successful in fighting off the takedowns, getting back up, making Simone work, I mean, that opens up all kind of possibilities to him. Or if Simone just decides to bite down and swing with them, he might get caught like he did against Faber. But yeah, like I think the matchup here does slightly favor Simone if he fights to his best advantage. And yeah, you love to see it happen. You know, like I like wrestle boxers as much as you do. It's kind of ironic that he lost to Uriah Faber, because he's like a perfect cookie cutter example of the type of wrestle boxer that Team Alpha Male basically foisted onto MMA. But I like Simone here to win a decision over Song in a really, really fun fight. Might be one of the type of fights where on the recap, we're saying that neither guy's stock really took a hit here because both guys, made the right decisions, foster their best potential, and just Simone happened to come out on the winning end. But yeah, give me Simone to win by decision and probably to be in the title picture in this division, maybe by the end of the year. And if it comes down to him and Merab, there's already some history there. It'll be an easy one to sell. That's it. the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC Fight Night 223, Song versus Simone. I've been Ben Duffy. He has been Keith Schillen. If this is your first time watching one of our previews, first of all, thank you. We hope you enjoyed it. We do our best to bring a nice mix of actual analysis and predictions of the fights, the occasional humorous aside. Sometimes we get story time with Keith, but by all means, please do like, subscribe, leave us a comment. Keith and I both man the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. If you think we're way off base on any of these picks, if you have any of these 3-1 underdogs pulling it out, let us know. Make yourselves heard. But most importantly, join us on the recap. We are live on the Sherdog YouTube page, usually about 15 minutes after the main event ends, right while the post-fight pressers and everything are still going, where we break down all these fights in reverse order of how we just did it. We'll start from the headliner all the way down to that first prelim and talk about what was good, what was bad, what was surprising, what was controversial. There's always something. Usually Keith takes the captain's chair for those, but I think Keith may not be available this week. So it might be me running it solo, might be me with a guest, or we'll see what happens. But the comment section on the YouTube page is live that whole time. So we are taking your questions, your comments, and your hot takes in real time. We have a growing community of friends there that hang out with us after the fights, and we would love you to be a part of it. In between now and then, thank you once again for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week, and by all means, enjoy the fights.